I can't remember the last time I slept through the night without that gnawing feeling in my chest. I've started keeping a journal now, partly to remember what's happening, partly to cling to some fragment of sanity. If anyone ever finds this, I hope it tells the story better than I can. It began quietly, almost deceptively normal. I woke up that morning to the usual sound of birds outside my window, and my family bustling in the kitchen. Mom was humming, Dad muttering about work, and my little sister Ellie chasing the dog around the living room. But there was something off just beneath the familiar noise, a strange tension, like the air itself was holding its breath. The news was the first real clue. I remember sitting on the couch, staring at the TV as the anchor spoke in that clipped, urgent tone. Reports are coming in from multiple cities about a new viral outbreak. People are showing extreme aggression, attacking others without provocation. Authorities are urging everyone to stay indoors. I thought it was a joke at first, some sensationalist piece, but then I saw it. The footage of people tearing through a grocery store, their eyes wild, their teeth bared like animals. I told myself it was just chaos somewhere else, that it couldn't reach us. But the headlines didn't lie. By evening, the streets were eerily empty. Mom tried to laugh it off, telling me not to worry, but her hands trembled as she cut vegetables for dinner. Dad kept checking his phone every few minutes, jaw tight, and Ellie had stopped talking entirely, just hugging her stuffed rabbit and staring at the floor. By the second day, the emergency broadcasts were nonstop. Curfews, quarantine zones, military checkpoints, and still, the news didn't prepare me for the first time I saw one of them up close. My neighbor, Mr. Harris, who lived 2 doors down, stumbled into the yard, eyes vacant, face streaked with blood. The dog barked frantically and I froze, unable to move. Mom shouted for me to get inside, but even as I ran, the sound of tearing flesh haunted me. By the third day, panic had taken hold. Food was scarce, and even the grocery stores were barricaded or abandoned. People whispered rumors about the infection. Some said it was airborne, others that it spread through bites. We fortified our house as best as we could, locking doors, boarding windows, and keeping knives close at hand. Dad tried to reassure us, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. The unspoken truth lingered. This wasn't going to end well. I started keeping this diary at that point. Writing down my thoughts feels like a lifeline. Like each word pushes back the darkness just a little. I don't know if I'm recording reality or just the fragments of a mind, slowly unraveling, but I have to try. The night was the hardest. Every shadow felt alive. Every creak in the house sounded like claws against the walls. Ellie cried quietly, her small hands clutching mine as if my presence alone could protect her. Mom whispered prayers I didn't understand. And Dad stayed in the living room, peering out the window, muttering numbers and codes under his breath. I wanted to believe he had a plan, but the truth was clear. The world we knew was gone, and we were trapped in this new nightmare. By the time I finally fell asleep, or maybe I just passed out from exhaustion, the sounds outside had changed. The once distant growls and screams had drawn closer. The thought that someday soon, this would reach our doorstep filled me with a cold, hollow dread. I don't know how long this will last or if we'll survive, but I need to keep writing. It's the only way to remember who I am before the world went insane. I woke today to an eerie silence, the kind of silence that feels heavy, pressing down on your chest. No birds, no wind, no distant sounds of life at all, just the occasional groan from somewhere outside. Dad insists it's safer to stay in, but staying in feels more like waiting for the world to come, crashing through our doors. Mom tried to make breakfast, but her hands shook too much to fry eggs. Ellie barely ate, too frightened to move from her little corner on the couch. I tried to reassure her, but even my own voice sounded hollow. I don't think any of us fully believed we'd survive this. By noon, the news was unrecognizable. Every channel showed chaos, cities burning, roads clogged with abandoned cars, people screaming and running in every direction. The authorities were gone, or at least completely ineffective. There were whispers now about entire towns being overrun in hours. I didn't want to believe it, but the footage on the screen left no room for doubt. It wasn't until mid-afternoon that I saw the first of them near our house again. A young man, maybe in his 20s, stumbled across our street. His skin had a grayish pallor, his eyes completely dark, and there was a strange, guttural sound that escaped him whenever he moved. I froze. Mom screamed from the kitchen, and Dad grabbed a baseball bat, ready to strike if he got close. But he didn't come any closer. He just lurked, twitching as if drawn by something unseen. By the evening, we realized that staying indoors wasn't enough. The power had gone out hours ago, and with it went our communication with the outside world. No phones, no internet, nothing. Just darkness, broken only by the flickering light of candles and the occasional thump from the streets outside. Ellie started talking to herself, whispering about people who were supposed to come home. I didn't correct her. Part of me didn't want to. Maybe clinging to normalcy, even if it was imaginary, was all that kept her mind safe. I tried to sleep that night, but sleep didn't come. Every noise felt magnified, the creak of the floorboards, the groan of the old roof, the distant shriek of someone being attacked. I kept imagining that if I peeked out the window, I'd see them right there, staring at me with those hollow eyes. And maybe I would. On day 5, Dad made a decision. We needed to leave. Staying in the house, barricaded though it was no longer safe. Supplies were running low, and the sounds outside made it clear we were not alone. He had a plan, or at least a desperate version of one. We packed what we could carry: canned food, water, a few blankets, and some weapons Dad had scavenged. The journey outside was worse than I imagined. Streets were littered with abandoned cars, some still burning, and bodies, or what remained of them, lay scattered across the asphalt. The smell of decay was everywhere, thick and choking. I kept Ellie close. Every shadow seemed alive, every corner hiding some threat. By the time we reached the edge of town, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just an outbreak. It was the end of the world we knew. Houses were empty, stores looted, and the occasional figure we saw wasn't human anymore. Not really. They moved wrong, eyes empty, faces twisted with hunger. And they weren't afraid of us. That night, we slept in the ruins of an old gas station. Dad kept watch, flashlight in hand, eyes darting to every movement. Mom tried to comfort Ellie, whispering that it would be okay, but even she didn't believe it. I stayed awake most of the night, listening to the distant moans and imagining how long we had before someone or something found us. I write this not knowing if tomorrow will come. I don't know how long we can keep running, how long we can cling to each other before the world devours us. But I write anyway. It's the only thing that keeps me tethered to who I am, or who I hope I still am. We're starting to build tension. The outside world is falling apart, and the family's struggle is becoming more desperate. Day 10 began with hunger. Not the kind of hunger that comes from skipping a meal, but a deep, clawing emptiness that gnawed at all of us. The food we'd scavenged was running low. Cans rattled in our bags, half-empty water bottles sloshed. Every time Ellie asked for more, Mom would hand her part of her own share. I saw her lips growing paler each day. We kept moving along back roads, trying to avoid the highways. The main roads were clogged with cars and corpses, but the smaller paths had their own dangers: overgrowth, silence, and the sense that eyes were always watching. Dad kept his bat tight in his grip, and I clutched the knife until my knuckles turned white. We came across a house that afternoon, not abandoned, though at first it looked that way. Curtains drawn, door locked. Dad wanted to move on, but the thought of food, water, maybe even warmth, was too tempting. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again, harder this time. That's when we heard it. Movement inside. A scrape of furniture, a stifled voice. Someone was there. "Please," Dad called, his voice softer than I'd heard in days. "We just need supplies." "We won't stay." Silence. Then a single reply, low and firm. "Go." Dad froze. Mom pulled Ellie back. I held my breath. Whoever was inside, they weren't going to share. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe they were as desperate as us. After a long pause, Dad turned, shoulders slumped, and we walked away. I glanced back once and thought. I saw a figure peeking through the curtain, eyes sunken, face gaunt, like a ghost still clinging to its house. That night we slept in a barn. Hay for bedding, holes in the roof that let in the cold. But it was shelter, and for a brief moment it almost felt safe. Ellie whispered stories to me, old fairy tales Mom used to read her. I listened, not because I believed in them, but because I needed her voice to fill the darkness. Day 11 brought rain. cold, drenching rain that soaked through our clothes and made the road slippery with mud. We trudged on, each step heavier than the last. By midday, we were exhausted, drenched, and shivering. Dad spotted a truck on the side of the road, its doors hanging open. We searched it. Nothing but a few scraps of paper, a broken radio, and dried blood on the seats. I noticed something strange then. My reflection in the window. For a moment, I didn't recognize myself. My skin looked paler, my eyes darker, sunken. I touched my face, half expecting the glass to show me something monstrous. But then Dad called my name, and the moment passed. Still, I couldn't shake it. That evening, as the rain eased, we stumbled upon a small chapel. Its doors hung crooked, but inside was dry. Wooden pews coated in dust, a cracked crucifix above the altar. We settled there, too tired to keep moving. Mom lit a candle she'd found, its small flame flickering weakly. She whispered a prayer, her voice breaking. Ellie clung to her, asking if God was still listening. I wanted to believe he was. But when I looked at that cracked crucifix, it felt like even he had abandoned this place. Day 12 was the breaking point. We woke to the sound of footsteps, too steady, too deliberate to be the dead. Dad motioned for silence. We listened. More footsteps circling outside the chapel. Whispering voices. The living. They tried the doors first, then the windows. Dad shouted for them to leave, but they only laughed. "We just want to talk," one called. His voice was oily, mocking. "Open up. Share what you've got." Dad refused. The voices grew harder, angrier. A rock smashed through one of the side windows. Mom screamed, Ellie cried, and I gripped the knife so tightly my hands shook. It was hours before they left. Hours of threats, pounding, laughter that made my blood run cold. When silence finally returned, we knew we couldn't stay another night. The world wasn't just filled with the dead. It was filled with the desperate, the cruel, the ones who'd take everything you had just to survive another day. As we left the chapel, I realized something terrifying. The dead outside weren't the worst monsters. The worst ones still had beating hearts.